Good afternoon, students. This is the sixth and last part of the chapter Sectors of the Indian Economy, Class 10, Subject Social Science. Student, in this section, we will begin from page number 33 of your textbook, where we are starting from recollecting what we have studied so far in this chapter. So, let us recall what we have studied. We have made so far classification of economic activity on the two criteria. Number one, the first criteria was on the basis of nature of activity, where we divided economic activities into primary, secondary and tertiary, and we tried to find out the contribution made by these three sectors in the production and employment. And we could also find out that over the year, dominance from primary sector has shifted towards secondary and tertiary sector in the terms of production and contribution in the GDP, but similar change has not taken place in the employment what it was supposed to be. Now student, in the second classification, which was based on the criteria, was structure of organization, where we divided economic activity into organized and unorganized. In this section we could come to know that what are the various terms and condition of the employment, and we also came to know that though organized sector is required for the well-being of the employee as well as for the employer, but actually it has been found that larger number of people still work in the unorganized sector. The size of unorganized sector is much higher than the organized sector. Now student, before we move to the third classification of economic activity, we would try to find out on the same page there is a table 2.4 expecting you to do something. So I would suggest you open the page 33 and along with me go through this table 2.4. Here it is a table saying classifying economic activity. Sectors are in two categories as what we have discussed so far: primary, secondary and tertiary. Criteria use nature of activity. So organized, unorganized, what was the criteria? I already mentioned you the structure of organization. Most important conclusion what we could draw from the primary, secondary, tertiary, I already made the point clear little earlier that we have come to know that the dominance of primary sector has been replaced by secondary and tertiary sector in terms of share in the GDP production, but similar change has not taken place in the generating of the employment. In the organized, unorganized, we could find that our larger area is still in the unorganized, and we should keep making effort that more and more areas where production is taking place, certain economic activities taking place should be converted into organized. Keeping them in unorganized is not good for the employee as well as for employer. And problem indicated and how they can be tackled, that is already being addressed. That problem is that how to create more employment opportunity in the primary sector, where still our 50% of the people are working. And on the other side, in this section, organized, unorganized, our problem is that how we can ensure that larger number of institutions or factories or companies get registered in the organized sector and follow the rules and regulations set by the government, like Gratuity Act, like Minimum Wages Act, like Factories Act, Shop and Establishment Act. All are going to be followed to ensure that the workers working in these institutions are not going to get exploited. That was the case, students, so far. Now moving to the next heading on the same page 33, sector in terms of ownership, that is public and private. So student, now moving to third classification of economic activity, and the very criteria of this classification is ownership of means of production. What does it means, ownership of means of production? It simply means, as per your textbook, who owns assets and responsible for delivery of various services. That is the meaning of ownership of the means of production. Now because of this, we have in this section we will study two sector, private sector and public sector. So let's find out what are the public sector and what are the private sector. Look, public sector is something which is owned by the government and it provide variety of services. It established educational institution, it established hospitals, it provide various welfare things for the people. On the other side, student, private sector is the sector in which ownership is being controlled by the individual or group of individual or companies. There are few examples, student, for you. That example of public sector is railway, post office, that is mentioned in your book. Many more examples are possible. Similarly, example of private sectors are Reliance Industry Limited, which is owned by the Mukesh Ambani company, which is actually owned by Mukesh Ambani. Then you have Tata Group of company producing Tisco, Telco. Telco means Tata Engineering and Locomotive Company. Tisco means Tata Iron and Steel Company, and various companies are running in the private sector across the country, which again do work for the sake of profit. That is the two area. Now you are being asked that what government do, what public sector is owned for. It is not meant to make profit, rather it is to look for the welfare of the country, welfare of the people. That is the main agenda of our public sector. Government don't charge money for making the profit, because it generate its earning from the tax and other resources. On the other side, student, private sector is all meant to do the profit. Private sector is only and only meant to earn profit. It means they provide every services against the money. So if we have to get any services from the private sector, we have to pay them money. You can take the example, there are hospitals existing in both the sector, public and private. In public hospital, whenever you go there, you just pay ₹1. Even in modern times, when ₹1 has actually no value, you simply pay for making the name registered in the hospital, and then you get rest of the treatment from the best of the doctor, as well as medicine also free of cost. That's the public sector. On the other side, student, in private sector we have hospitals with facilities like 5-star hotels, which charge you plenty of rupees, what can be affordable to only rich section of the society. Now question is, in modern day, if next paragraph is addressing that in modern times our government has taken plenty of activities under its agenda. So question is, why government do these kind of work of production? It is not the duty of the government to produce anything. Student, there are various reasons that government used to do. Your book has given one by one. First point is that government spend on these activities because it is only government which can spend for not making profit, and it is the government which can provide certain facilities at a reasonable cost. You cannot expect it from the private sector. That is the first point. You can say that government has to spend in these areas on which private will not be spending the money for the reasonable cost. Reason, it is wanting to make profit. Private is all about making profit, so they will try to make as much profit by charging higher and higher. Government provides services, as I said already, examples of government hospital, examples of government school, where charges are quite less. On the other side, student, there is second thing, that in few areas government do make the spending because large amount of investment required, which may be beyond the capacity of the private sector. Government being into the possession of collecting taxes from the people across the country is in possession of large sum of money, which can be invested on big project like establishing like construction of the road, construction of the canals, construction of dams, railways, harbor, bridge. All these are required lot of investment, what may not be possible for the private sector. Or if possible, again there is a question that why they will invest for the sake of doing the welfare of the society. They are most likely to make the profit. Student, third point what they have mentioned, that you cannot compare the private sector resources with the government, because government has a larger machinery. So certain things which has to be arranged for people across the country can be done by only government. Private cannot be expected to arrange, like railway. You cannot expect private sector to have institution at a large scale like railway exists in India. It is next to impossible. Maybe the biggest private company sector in India cannot match the size and the the size of railway, in terms of making productivity every single day, in terms of the employment existing in the railway. You cannot be expecting this. Student, our next agenda is that government also ensure that the facility what it is providing is for everyone. If you will expect it from the private sector, I don't think that private will ensure that everyone is going to get benefit. Private sector will only focus that those who can pay for the price what they are demanding should be in a state of availing the facility given by the private sector. That is why public sector or the government take initiative to ensure that the welfare related activities to be provided for everyone. Student, some activities government do to support even private sector. That's another point. Point number 5 is that government produce various things. Say example of electricity. Government produce electricity and it provide at the lesser price than the cost of production of electricity, so that many factories, especially in the small scale sector, are not going to shut down because of the high cost of production and not able to make the profit in the near future. So it is the government which can do this, that they can provide things at a lesser price than the price of the production. Now moving to another point, student, I hope you studied the word like fair price and MSP in your class 9. Chapter was food security in India. You came to know that government purchase the grains and other food stuffs from the farmer at a high price and sell it to the consumer through their PDS shop, public distribution shop, at a lesser price. It means it is the government what purchase the things at a costly price and sell at a lesser price to do the welfare of both our farmer and our needy section of society. Can you expect this from private sector, that they will be selling something at a price lesser than what their cost of production is? Impossible, next to impossible. It is only what can be done by the government do the welfare of both these sections. They keep protecting our farmers because they produce the food for the country, as well as they provide us food security. And on the other side, poor section of society what cannot afford food stuff at the I'm sorry, higher cost, they need to be provided. Some activities are done by government as consider it as their primary responsibility, like housing, sanitation, education, you can say hospitals. Hospital example I already gave you. Can you imagine in 2020 you are going to avail all medical facility in a government hospital by paying few ₹1 where you can make the entry, where you can get the consultation of a doctor, and later on rest of the services at a very less price compared to the private sector, but government ensure that. Similarly, government provide educational facilities at a very less price because it is the responsibility of the government to provide elementary education between the age group of 6 to 14 to make sure that every single person in this country get required level of education. Government also do this to increase the rate of literacy in the country, which is vital for the economic development of the country. We have studied the role of human development, role of human capital, and importance of education, training and medical care in our class 9 chapter 2, that was people as resource. Now student, government also tried to make lot of effort in the field of education so that it can reduce the infant mortality rate. Your book has given data that in Odisha and Madhya Pradesh there is a high infant mortality rate. So what government in these areas are likely to do? Government in these areas are likely to provide all the facilities to the mother and their newborn babies so that they are not going to lose their life. Infant are not going to die before completing the age 1, or even they are likely to expect even they are expected to live longer. That is what government role is. Then government do some certain activities for a human development. Student, human development is also the responsibility of the government. As I said that it is supposed to take care of the poorest section of the society or the region of the country where there is a poor development taken place so far. Government need to provide sanitation, safe drinking water. Government need to provide housing facilities to those who still lives in the slums area, and for this government do not take care of the profit. Government do not have any profit orientation as compared to the private sector. Government means public sector continue to generate resources by the means of tax, and that tax is progressive tax. I hope you understand progressive tax. Our government charge higher and higher rate of tax on the rich people, and what tax is collected from these rich section of society is going to invest on the development of the poor section of society, and some facilities are provided to everyone, be it rich or poor, like good roads, good infrastructure in terms of electricity, in terms of generating in terms of providing pollution free environment, in terms of cleaning our river, in terms of making sure that all foodstuffs are going to be available in the country, so that farmer need to be provided these. That is how we can differentiate the role of the public sector and private sector. Again repeating it, public sector do lot of activities because in the country it has the responsibility, and it has the responsibility towards every person in the living in the country, not only to the rich section of society, and that's why it is not oriented to make profit. It is meant to do the welfare of society. But against public sector, the private sector is meant to make the profit, so they produce only those things, and with the intention that they can make only those things where they can make profit, and with the intention that they are going to sell to that section which can pay them as high as possible. Student, with this we are completing the chapter number 2, that is sectors of the Indian economy. Last page where there are exercise section, plenty of questions are there. I expect after making this explanation that you can move ahead and you can find the solution. I am sure most of the question you will be able to do. Student, there are some questions on mathematical line also, where you are expected to do the percentage calculation. In the third part I made you how we calculate the percentage to. So here some data of GDP production and share in primary, secondary and tertiary are given. I expect you to do the calculation. In case you struggle, you discuss with your teacher. You can discuss with your mathematics teacher also if required. You will be able to sort it out. That's all, student. Thank you very much.